Hey everyone, welcome to the LGBTQ Voice. I'm Tracy Welch alongside Eileen Dugas. Each week, we invite guests on the show to talk about resources, events, health and wellness, and what's happening in and around the South Coast LGBTQ plus network. Welcome, Eileen. How are you?
Hi, Tracy. Hi, everyone. This show is presented by the South Coast LGBTQ plus network. We are a nonprofit organization working with LGBTQ plus groups and allied organizations to build and maintain a comprehensive network for LGBTQ plus individuals and families in Southeastern Massachusetts. For sponsorship opportunities, please contact Leo at newbedfordguide.com and he will help you out. We definitely are in need of sponsors to continue our show. So if you're interested, talk to Leo. Welcome, everyone. As Tracy said, my name is Eileen Dugas, and I'm the network coordinator. And today, Tracy's going to give us an update on our show focus for the summer, what we're doing. We're going to talk with our special guest, Lisa Lemieux, president of the Greater Massachusetts Labor Council, AFL-CIO. And joining us also is Ricardo Rosa, co-chair of New Bedford Coalitions to Save Our Schools, and Monique Onoha, one of the organizers of the Black Lives Matters movement in New Bedford. Then we'll talk a little bit about the events coming up. And of course, as always, if you want to talk with us, you have questions, leave your comments and we will get to you. So Tracy, tell us what we're focusing on this summer and any other updates you have.
No, thanks, Eileen. So we wanted, the network formed about six years ago. 7 LGBTQ agencies and allied organizations formed. We wanted to create support for LGBTQ folks in the South Coast, from youth to elderly, all nationalities and skin colors, for everyone. Last year, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots that changed the world forever. The LGBTQ communities fought together, and we continue that fight today. So 50 years ago in New Bedford, in July, was the 50th anniversary of the New Bedford riots. So 50 years ago, tensions between police and the Black community boiled over and erupted on the streets of New Bedford, bringing national attention. That period began on July 8th, 1970. Besides tensions with police, the Black community was angry over underlying issues of unemployment, lack of education, poor housing, and discrimination. The situation escalated when 3 white men from neighboring communities stopped their car and fired a shotgun directed into the crowd, killing 17-year-old Black male Lester Lima. The 3 white men were arrested and all 3 were acquitted. Together as a community, we need to end racism. So we celebrate Pride Month, the whole entire month of June, and we do something every year for that celebration of where we've been, where we're at, where we're going. Our quality is not where it used to be, but we wanted to focus our show on July and August for Black Lives Matter. So we've been inviting guests maybe to focus on some of the solutions, what's going on, and how the community can help. So that's what these shows are focused on. So I also want to make sure that you guys know that last week when we talked, our youth group, NB Agley, New Bedford Alliance of Gay and Lesbian Youth, our meeting last Thursday, we did a walk around Buttonwood Park. We invited our LGBTQ plus kids ages 14 to 24 to meet us in the park, and everybody got a $50 gift card to Market Basket to help with nutrition and grocery needs. So this Thursday, our kids are going to meet at downtown in New Bedford at Acushnet Creamery. We're going to just buy an ice cream for everybody and just kind of hang out at the pier, just kind of get the kids out and kind of see what's going on in the community. So again, that grant was through Mark Montigny's office. Senator Montigny sent us a message saying, how can we help you guys? What are your needs? And we were able to get $5,000 for the kids in our community, LGBTQ. So join our Facebook page, NB Agley, A Perfect Place, if you're in that age group. If you're older than that age group, then we have NB Agley, Allies of a Perfect Place. So I want to make sure that every show that we do a shout out to our kids so people know that LGBTQ youth have a place and a space and representation in our community. So again, July and August is all Black Lives Matter, and let people know what's going on in the community. So that's what I got, Eileen. What you got?
Thank you, Tracy. So we have a lot of events coming up that I want to get to at the end of the show. I'll go through them real quick, but I want to get right into introducing our guests. Tracy, do you want to introduce the guests and start off our questions?
Yeah, I just want to say, well, we already introduced, we got Lisa, Monique, and Ricardo. Can you each just kind of tell us about your role in the community and what you do?
Sure, I can begin. My name is Ricardo Rosa. I'm the co-chair of the New Bedford Coalition to Save Our Schools. I've been involved in the community since arriving in New Bedford in multiple organizations, including Third Eye and a number of others. The New Bedford Coalition to Save Our Schools is a diverse group made up of families, young people, activists, educators. We have about 150 members. And our goal is to stop the privatization of our public schools and to build quality public schools. We're also interested in public and social policy because we see we see public and social policy as basically educational policy, right? So a family that's adversely affected by negative public policy will likely, have young people in the family that experience negative outcomes in schooling as a result. So that's who we are.
Thank you. Monique?
Hi, I'm Monique Onoha. I'm one of the organizers with the Black Lives Matter movement in New Bedford. So basically, we're just here trying to push change with pretty much everything. I mean, this country was built on racism, so we understand it's going to take a long time before we get the change we need, but we're not going to back down. We're not going to give up. We're going to work hard every single day. Our main focus right now is building the community within the community. That's our biggest goal right now.
And Lisa.
So Lisa Lemieux, I wear many hats in the city of New Bedford. Today I'm here as the president of the Greater Southeastern Massachusetts Labor Council. And the Labor Council represents over 40 different unions. Our jurisdiction covers all of Southeastern Massachusetts, so basically everything from Taunton south. And our interests are big, right? They're not just about worker issues. We represent ununionized workers as well as unionized. We're very much involved in politics for all the right reasons, which is why I'm also a co-chair on the New Bedford City Dems and a state member with a Massachusetts Democratic Party. And so I do a lot in the city when it comes to labor and politics. But I'm also a mom and a grandma, which we'll hear about, right?
Well, all right, we'll joke about it now, I guess. So I met Lisa. Her daughter was one of our first peer leaders for NB-AGLE, and Alicia's due in October. And I always say, I know she's your kid, but our kids, it's just amazing that, in 2012, we formed this community center, for kids, and to see the growth that these kids have and to still be in contact. So I'm still in contact with your daughter, Alicia, and I'm still in contact with Christian. And they were the two first peer leaders, because once you're 24, you age out of our group, but you're never gone. Our home is your home. So that's how I met Lisa years back.
We're proud of the work and, the progress that you guys have been able to make. And, we'll be a lifelong supporter and do everything that we can. And, it's not always been easy to talk about these things. And that's what's important to me, is that we actually have a conversation, we have the dialogue, and that we're able to have this conversation with other people, whether it's, we're not always going to agree, but there's different perspectives and there's different views, and some people don't know the history and how things got to where they are. And that's why it's important to talk about these things.
Thanks, Lisa. Eileen?
Lisa, does the union have a focus right now that the community can be involved with?
So our focus is pretty broad. Throughout COVID, many of our workers, many of the members that we represent in our different unions have been working through the entire COVID process, through the entire epidemic. Workers who've been putting their lives on the line and their members of their families on the line by doing the work that they do. But we also have lots of members who have not been able to work during COVID. And so we've been dealing with furloughs and unemployment issues and, people needing help to get food in their homes and things to that effect. And while that's been going on, nothing else has stopped. right? We still have to worry about politics. We still have legislators who are in session right now in Massachusetts who are trying to get a budget done that's important to us. It's important to members of our community. We had rallies in New Bedford and Fall River last week about essential workers and essential services in our communities that are going to go through drastic cuts if our legislators cannot pass a budget that is going to support our communities the way that they need to do that. So a big focus, as usual, nothing new, is going to be politics, has been politics, whether it's special elections. We've got the primaries coming up in September and a general election in November. All those things are important to us and our members, and how we can make a difference. And so, and then with that, this year comes the census on top of it all. So we've been participating in discussions with the census about how we help to get our communities counted so that, once again, our communities can get the funding that they need.
Thank you. I did have a follow-up question for Ricardo as well. Ricardo, you had said that you're trying to stop, one of your focuses is stopping the privatization of public schools. For our viewers, can you explain a little bit about what that means? Some people might not understand what that means exactly.
Sure, but before I do that, I'd like to honor Monique. Lynea is not on, and the young people I invited to the show. And I just like to say that Monique did not have an understanding, that neither did I, that this show was going to be on the New Bedford Guide. And so, Monique, if you choose not to continue participation, I totally respect it. Out of respect for my sister, Lisa Lemieux, who invited me on the show, I like to remain and continue the dialogue. But I want to put that out there. I want to act in full respect of the Black Lives Matter movement in New Bedford, and allow these young people to leave should they choose to do so. I just want to begin there, Monique. So just know that, okay? As far as privatization goes, our coalition has been resisting the existence and the expansion of what's called charter schools in the city of New Bedford. And charter schools are basically schools that are unaccountable to the public. They have a private board, mostly made up of people who don't live in the city, and people who are usually connected to big money. Whenever there's a problem in charter schools, the students do not have a recourse to a school board. They don't have recourse to any public mechanism to voice their concerns. Furthermore, these charter schools basically siphon off per pupil student funding from the public school system, and again, they have a very intricate structure of operation where students are sometimes counseled out if they have any special needs the school cannot handle. English language learners, or what I call emergent bilingual students, are sometimes counseled out if the school cannot handle their services, whereas public schools, cannot turn students away. So we feel that it's a structure that's highly problematic and is really about the erasure of the public sphere. So that's what I mean by privatization. Privatization just means any project, including vouchers, including, for example, performance contracting, opening up contracts with companies for services that can be created within the public school system, and moving money away from the public school system into private interests. So that's what I'm talking about.
Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
Yep. So how can the community assist with this focus?
Well, I think the community can be involved with the New Bedford Coalition to Save Our Schools. I mean, we're very open in terms of, opening dialogues with the public. We have a number of community forums that we host to educate the public about, this issue of privatization, and also to get perspectives from the public. I mean, very often we have people come on that disagree with some of the points that we highlight, and the important thing is to have that dialogue, But the New Bedford Coalition to Save Our Schools is open to anyone, who wants to join. We have monthly meetings and we make it public. So all you have to do is go on our site, nbcsos.org, to find out when those meetings are, when our public forums are hosted, and feel free to join in. I mean, this privatization effort is one thing we're involved in. We're also involved in the move to remove police officers from our schools. The research just does not support the presence of police officers. There's more detrimental effects than positive. We're against the issue of high stakes testing in our schools. We feel that it's not educationally sound. In fact, it's educational malpractice. Any administrator in schools that are still touting the virtues of high stakes testing is actually, doing a disservice to our community.
So you guys have a Facebook page as well, Ricardo?
We do have a Facebook page.
Right. I did my research on you. I peeked, before we do the show, I want to make sure that we make sure people can get a hold of you guys, and sometimes Facebook's a little bit easier.
Yes, we do have a Facebook page.
I know Monique got off. I don't know if she got off because we are on the Bedford Guide or not. But I was talking to Lisa offline that I think it's really important that people see that the youth in our community are standing tall and side by side with everybody. We joked on our show like 2 years ago, Eileen, that we had a show when we had 2 seniors on the show with a couple of gay kids, and they answered questions out of the hat. And by the time the elders got, the mature, they like to be called mature, heard what was going on with our kids, like, oh my God, our job's not done. When is the job not done, right? When we're all equal, when the diversity is, where it needs to be, equality, equity, when all these things need to be where they're at, I think that's when the job is done. So our seniors in our community are like, they volunteer at Pride every year now. They're being seen more, so the kids have like some sort of role model, and they talk to each other. So it's really important that these kids, and I say they're kids, my son's 33, he's still my kid, that they were going to be able to come on the show and talk about what they're going through, as well as, Ricardo, yourself. I'm not of color, but I'm a 56 white, woman. But I want to know how we can help, right?
Right.
And I think that's important that the kids are coming on the show, and I appreciate you staying on the show, Ricardo.
Well, you're welcome. These young women, these young people are my sheroes.
Yep.
So I had to let them know about the platform and allow them the opportunity to express their own wishes. So, I respect all of their brilliant work locally. They working in the tradition of Cabral, the tradition of Ella Baker and Edward Said. I mean, they're unwilling to accept easy formulas. They're very much about critique. They speak not only in the voice of critique, but they also speak in the voice of building. So they want to build a different community, a different society. And they're not passive, but they're very active and willing to voice their concerns in public. So I respect them a lot. So I have to say that.
So I know usually on the show what we do is we have comments on the page. So I know Eileen reads a couple of them. But Lionel Walker, Peter, and you part of Third Eye, Ricardo. Peter was on our show a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
So we talked about Third Eye. We talked about what's going on in the community, and he talked about being a black-owned business downtown. So Peter said, shout out to the youth, and use the platform to bring awareness to the audience who might not have a way to hear any opinions beyond online rhetoric from posts. So I want to give a shout out to Peter. He was just on our show a couple weeks ago. Eileen?
So I did have a lot of questions from Monique, but I'm gonna skip over those. I guess maybe I'll put them out there for the community and see if they have answers. So as young people in our community, how can people become involved with Black Lives Matters movements in New Bedford? So there are young people out there that are leading this, that are really active in the community, and like Ricardo said, they're not going to settle. They want to keep this moving forward. How can they get involved? So if you're out there watching and ways for people to get involved and get connected, put it out there in the comment section, and I'll definitely look into that and share it with everyone.
And it's not just that. If you guys have any events that you have coming up, just send them to us. We share it, again, depending on what the material is about. We have like 20 sites that we share our information on. So again, depending on what the information is, any events you guys have coming up, just kind of let us know, and we can direct people to these groups that are out there. We know there's Third Eye, Dream Out Loud had an event that was just happening in New Bedford. So there's things like that. So I guess this is for everybody. So with the murder of George Floyd, has brought the Black Lives Matter to the forefront. How do we ensure this momentum continues?
I like to say something there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Right. I think that this issue is not just about George Floyd. Obviously, ever since George Floyd, we have multiple police killings. So all of them are important, for us to struggle with and wrap our minds around, not only in the United States, but worldwide. We see this issue in Brazil as well. So there is a way where we need to make these connections. And I think it's not just about state sanctioned violence in the form of police violence. Violence can be done not just with guns or, batons or a knee to the neck. Violence can be done with public policy, and we see that all around us. So that's one way to get involved. You know what I'm saying? Rather than just respond to these horrific, acts of violence by the state, we have to understand that acts of violence by the state happens every single day in multiple institutions that we walk through. And the question to ask is how are we sort of participants of this violence, of these acts, in our own institutions and work to correct them. I'm a professor as well. There are things that I want to do to change sort of the university setting. Those of you who are teachers, there should be things that you want to do to change, the institution of schooling. If you work in healthcare, wherever you work, I mean, there's always work to be done. I think we're living in very dangerous times, right? So it's not just about George Floyd. I mean, this COVID-19 crisis has exposed, decades, of state neglect for people, right? State neglect for the social contract, for the social safety net, right? What we're seeing is that we exist in a society that has a government that's totally unprepared, to deal with the public health crisis. And in the same breath, we see a society with a government that is unable to protect the public and yet fully prepared to go to war with its own people, given this state-sanctioned violence and also given the repression of protests, or protesters throughout the country, And this is something that's horrific. It's something that we should all be, highly outraged by, And if we're not paying attention, and if we're not doing something about this, then we become part of the problem.
We talked, I think, a couple weeks ago when Peter was on the show, that when I talk about keep the momentum continuing, I fight every day for my LGBTQ rights, and every day I fight, and people in my community know, and I don't stop. So I feel that when every time an incident occurs, then people come more on board. And I just wish that people would just stay on board and not get off it. And I think that might help. And again, I'm not of color. I can just tell you that being gay, I strive every day to make sure that we don't go backwards, that the momentum needs to stay there, and people are taking their foot off the pedal thinking, all right, well, we got this far, right? But how do we keep that going? Why can't we keep people invested, I guess? I don't know if I'm using the right word, guys.
So I've been using one of John Lewis's quotes a lot lately because of his passing. He's a guy who has a lot of great history, one of our American heroes. But one of his quotes said that we have been too quiet for too long. There comes a time when you have to say something. You have to make a little noise and you have to move your feet. And this is that time. And this guy has been saying this for a very long time. And that's why I, as the president of the Greater Southeastern Massachusetts, I, as an organizer for healthcare workers with 1199 SEIU, and why I also feel as a community member, I have to be involved in this process because I recognize that racism has been a part of our lives for so long and that we've never saw the change through. And I want to be part of somebody who can do that and help bring people along. And so regardless of what group people belong to, we have to recognize when something is wrong in our lives, when something is wrong in our community, that we can't just turn our head and we just can't walk away and hope that somebody else deals with it, that we all have a responsibility and an obligation to step up and say something and do something, and to continue to do that until that bad thing is not there anymore. And I'm I'm walking a fine line as a labor leader in our community and in our state, because we represent police officers. We represent, people in our schools. We represent healthcare workers in our hospitals and our nursing homes, and home care workers that work in people's homes who aren't getting all the tools that they need to do their job. And so, as a president, I've taken a very strong stance that, and not everybody understands this, that collective bargaining agreements, right, in layman's term, union contracts, are not here to be a vehicle to protect the guilty or the people who are doing things wrong. Our union contracts mostly have discipline, progressive discipline, termination language that allows our employers to get rid of workers that are bad workers if they're doing something that they shouldn't. It's not a shield for misconduct, right? And so we also have union contracts that talk about how employers can do layoffs in our schools, in our hospitals, right? And these contracts are not there to prevent our employers from running their business. They have a right as employers to run their business, and we as union members have a right to collectively bargain over our working conditions and changes in our working conditions. And so it gets complicated and it's very confusing. The one thing that I know is that I'm going to stand behind all workers and all our collective bargaining agreements, but sometimes things need to change or things need to get better. And sometimes we agree to things in our contracts with our employers because it was what was in the best interest of all the parties at that time. And some of our contracts haven't changed with things with our times. And so, I just think we have to keep that in mind as we go forward and as we look for this change to happen, and how, I am extremely proud of the youth that have been stepping up in our community. As somebody who's been stepping up for a very long time, saying, where's the youth of our community? Where's a lot of people in our community? I'm just happy that people are stopping and taking notice and paying attention and doing more. And, I know for certain my role, has been to try to support the kids that have been out on the street, to help figure out, can we do teach-ins? Can we, can we, if we need to provide water, if we need to provide education, if we, what can we do to help them continue to do what they're doing, and keep it moving in a positive way? Because their intent is to be positive. Their intent is to create positive change in their communities. And we want to support that. And so that's, why I wanted Ricardo to be here with me. I said, I'm a labor person. I can talk about labor history and I can talk about labor law, but I am not an expert on Black Lives Matter or racism for that matter. I'm Mexican, I'm brown, I'm a person of color, I'm a female who's working in a traditionally male job, and I've worked really hard to get here, but I want to encourage people to follow their heart and do what they think it's right, and it leads to good stuff when you do that.
Eileen, you want to read some of the comments we had?
Sure. So we have Joni Dominguez. It should be very interesting. Linnell Walker, shout out to the youth and use the platform to bring awareness to the audience who might not have a way to hear any opinions beyond online rhetoric from posts. Tracy, I think you already read that one. I agree with that. High stakes testing is not good for our kids. Maureen said, thank you, Ricardo. Shirley says, is Jill Domingos your mother? I don't know who that's to. And again, Linnell Walker, get involved in everything we can to keep checks and balances, to bring not only awareness, but accountability in our schools, organizations, and businesses. Build our tables, but be willing to go to other tables to understand what we are really facing, good, bad, or indifferent, in my humble opinion.
Thanks, Peter. Good words of wisdom there. I know we're a little bit getting close to time, but is there anything that you guys want to kind of add to the table or bring to the table that we want people to know about? Any events you have coming up?
Sure. Let me just say though, so given that, you brought up some points that were intersectional in nature, I have to say that, in my view, the Black Lives Matter movement or the network is actually one of the most powerful examples of intersectional movement building that we've seen in years. So I just want to say that. I mean, this is a movement that was founded by the LGBTQ community. They also identifies as Black, obviously. And one of its greatest power is that it moves well beyond sort of the activism and the movement building of the 60s. You know, as you know, it was Bayard Rustin who was the architect of the March on Washington, and it was he who introduced Martin Luther King Jr. to Gandhi's work. So there would be no nonviolence in this country if it wasn't for Bayard Rustin. And the only reason why his voice didn't shine in the civil rights movement is because he was gay.
Yeah.
The Black Lives Matter movement is a movement that intersects, you know, a lot of these struggles, and that's its power, you know. And I'm just highlighting the Black Lives Matter movement because the show was dedicated to that. So I want to make sure that, you know, I do highlight that and give them, you know, their proper due. You know, today the work of the Black Lives Matter Network also involves undocumented immigrants. Their work moves beyond nationalism and national concerns, which I find very powerful. So I just want to say that as far as our work goes, we have a number of campaigns that we're involved in. Obviously, we're currently involved, continue to be involved in this push to end high stakes testing. I think particularly in light of the pandemic, you know, it has shown, you know, there's an opening, you know, to really end this structure, which is highly problematic for students. It's not about education; it's about miseducation. It's about busy work for a lot of young people, and it's not just the testing itself, but it's the sort of the test prep nature of education today. If you ask any young person if they like school these days or if they appreciate school, most of them will say no. But I've never met a young person who does not appreciate learning. So I think that high stakes testing has contributed to a structure that really turns people off. So that's one thing we're doing. Another thing we're doing is we have a rally actually this Thursday that departs from New Bedford High School at 12:30, and we're heading up to the Massachusetts Department of Education.
Oh, wow.
To protest the face-to-face opening of schools in September, and to make sure that whatever does happen in terms of educational policy happens in the interest of workers, happens in the interest of young people and their families. Our goal is to make sure that everything that unfolds come September speaks of safety, you know, to people, especially those who bear the most social cost in our communities. The other campaign that we've launched and that we continue to work on is quality lunches, quality food in our schools, food justice in our schools when the school does in fact reopen face to face. And again, we continue to fight this presence of police officers in schools. I mean, the research is very clear that it's counterproductive, and a lot of those resources that we use to pay police officers, we could be using to pay adjustment counselors, we could use to pay homeschool liaisons, interpreters in our schools, and we can additional nurses, additional PPE equipment, should schools return to some hybridity or some face-to-face model. So these are some things that we continue to struggle for.
No, we appreciate that. I mean, it's a tough year. My kids graduate in high school from New Bedford High, and we just got the phone call yesterday that they definitely canceled graduation. Pick up your diploma, pick up your yearbook on the 4th, 5th, and 6th of August. Bye. You know, and we talk about, is it safe enough for our kids to go back to school, but yet everything else is still closed and the government's closed and this is closed, but they want our kids to come back. I mean, again, I'm speaking for myself. It's just scary out there, you know, and I think we need to make sure that we're safe in everything that we do. I mean, going forward, like I said, I joke with Lisa, I haven't got my hair cut yet. I don't think it's safe enough yet. I just don't, you know. So I'll get it at some point, you know. But I'm doing what I think is what I need to do for me. We're going to be doing this show for July and August, and then anytime that somebody has an event, you want us to share it. You know, we put it on the network page. You know, Eileen does the website with Kerry Zeta, our marketing guru. We just have so many things, you know, the guests that we have coming up. So for you guys that don't know, coming up, we have Marcy Peter Christian will be here next month from the Human Relations Commission. Charlie Perry, his dad was in the riots, the 50th anniversary, I don't say anniversary, the riot, the Bedford riots. Karen Williams is a comedian of color. And when she got 4 kids, I think, of color, and we're going to talk about that. And then next week, we actually going to be talking about voting. You know, we're not saying who you're going to vote for, but, you know, how important it is. So that's what next week's show is going to be based on. So we have a lot of things that we do have coming up. Lisa, is there anything that you wanted to let the community know before we kind of head out?
Well, I think the voting thing is important. You know, we've got the ability to have ballots mailed to people so they could vote by mail. That's important. And people should be aware of what those deadlines are. And as I mentioned earlier, our legislators are meeting now to debate, the laws that are going to be passed in Massachusetts or not passed in Massachusetts. And that includes things like funding our cities or what's happening in our schools and what's happening on our streets. And so it is important for people to call their legislators. Our legislators are not perfect. Their job is hard too. And many times they're making decisions without all the information that they need. And so if you, as a viewer, feel strongly about any of the issues that we talked about today or any issues that are important to you, you should call your legislator and let them know what your position is on those issues that are important to you, because it might change their mind in how they vote or not vote on a certain issue. I know I've been very frustrated as a Massachusetts Democrat that I don't feel that our legislators are standing up and voting in the people's best interest. And so the best way to deal with that is to have more people get involved. More people need to vote and more people need to call their legislators. If you're unregistered, registered. If you're a non-voter, vote. And if you're a regular voter, thank you. But do your part to get other people registered and voting, because a lot of the bad things that have happened is because people are not paying attention. And bad things happen when people don't pay attention.
Oh, they think somebody else will take care of it. I think that's what I hear a lot. And again, my kid just turned 18. We're talking about voting. Again, when I grew up, it wasn't huge. My parents didn't really talk about that, right? I didn't hear about that till years later. And I'm like, why aren't I voting? So I said to my kids, she's like, well, I don't want to vote. I said, why? What is it that you don't want to vote? Let's talk about it. Let's start this dialogue, Then we were talking about something, and I said, well, you can change that. She goes, how? I go, vote. I'm like, oh my God, vote, So I know we're going to have Liz DiCarlo on our show. Liz DiCarlo is a staple in the LGBT community for years. She was part of Marriage Equality, and she's part of the Vote New Bedford that's out there right now. So she's going to be our guest next week, and I think we may have one more. But we wanted people to realize, it's important. September's coming. Before you know it, November's going to be here. And if you want change in the White House, if you don't want change in the White House, whatever you choose to do, but make a conscious effort to be part of the community. So, Eileen?
Yeah, so thank you, Lisa and Ricardo, for your input tonight and for joining us. I want to give a few updates. So tomorrow starts our 4-week wellness series with Jeff Costa at Custom House Square at 4:30. And I want to, say thank you to GNS Pizza for supporting us with this event. So everyone who attends will get a brown bag, takeaway dinner, and a gift card if you've registered, and it's up to 20 people. So there's still slots available. Register. Jeff is going to talk to us about wellness. He's not going to make you sweat too much in the hot sun. Come and join us. Also, we're holding a book club discussion group. Get the book. Read the book. Register August 19th at 7 p.m. We're going to talk about this. It's going to take you some time. It's not an easy read, right? A lot of reflection in this book. So get the book, read it, and then we'll talk about it. Our next comedy event is going to be with Karen Williams on August 15th at 7 p.m. Registration is open for that. That will be a Zoom event. And we have been provided with some grant money. So if you have some basic needs with housing, utilities, food, reach out to me. Call me 774-775-2656 or email me, and we'll have a conversation about how we might be able to help you with that. So please reach out. Let us know you're in need of some support. It is limited funds, but we do have some. So please let me know what you need. And I want to thank everyone again for joining us. And don't forget to join us next week as we talk to Liz DiCarlo. Thank you all for watching, and see you next Tuesday night at 7.
Take care.